Thank you for coming. My name is Andrea Tagliaferro. I'm a partner of SDG, that is a management consulting firm with a high specialization in data management, business intelligence, and CPM projects. Just a few words about SDG that was introduced 2 days ago by my colleagues Riccardo Beltrami. SDG was founded in 1994 in Milan, and we were young people in love with planning and controlling project. So our goals were to design and develop project about CPM, controlling and planning, but using technologies capable to make this kind of project work. And in the 1995 or 1996, we met Board, and we worked together since that years. This idea to present to our customer both design and implementing capabilities was really successful. In fact, now SDG cover all over the world. We have offices in Portugal, in Spain, that now is our bigger country in terms both of consultant and revenues. We are also in UK. We work in France, in Germany, in the Middle East with an office in Egypt, and from February of this year also in the United States. The scope of my presentation is to find how business intelligence and CPM solution could be used over a big data environment. I want to start with the questions. Typically, professionals and consultants ask the questions and then they hear for the answer. How is a business intelligence solution traditionally designed? The IT typical and Gartner definition of business intelligence says that BI is an umbrella term that includes applications, infrastructures, solutions, software vendors, best practice that enable access to analysis of information in order to improve the capability of taking the right decision. And how is a traditional BI typically designed? First, we identify data to be analyzed. Okay? In our terms, data are the facts. I mean, sales in volume, sales in quantity, gross sales by currency, net sales, discounts, cost of goods sold, and so on in a sales BI project. The second point is to identify the most commonly asked questions that the system have to answer. In this case, we talk about the dimensions. So we know that sales could be seen by customers, by product, by month, by delivery channel, and so on. Then, when we have found these questions, of course, we start to design and develop the database, and design and develop the front end that in Board are, as you know, capsules. This is an extract from a typical SDG offered when we talked about a business intelligence solution based on board. The first step is the analysis of the sources. So typically, we ask the customer, what's your ERP? Do you have a data warehouse? Over them, do you have some data marts? There are other structured data in your environment. Then we define on the paper the model. So we describe the variables, the facts, the dimensions, relationship between dimension and the navigation paths. Then we design, always on the paper, the reporting model. The application design is referring to the functional model of the system. So we talk about the load method, so ODBC or extract TXT file and so on, the definition of the source table, and the definition of the database in terms of cube, dimension, data reader, and all the structure that we have to design on the paper. Then we start to find the information into data warehouse or DRP, so into the typical sources of this kind of project, and we describe the method of extract them, transforming them if necessary, and then load into the board database. Only in the fourth phase of our methodologies, we start building the multi-dimensional database. Okay? So, new name, the time range, and we insert all the typical board database structure into the solution. We load the data, we make a first test with our customers, then we build the capsule based on what we draw on the paper in phase number 1. Then we deliver the system, that is that we have a training with the users and then with the administrators. We have a final test all over the application. They go live, and then if the customer asks us to make it, we support him also when the system is in go live situation. This is typical, and this works very well in a standard environment, let me say so. But the situation over there, you know, it's a difficult one. We live in a zero growth era. A CEO of a big British insurance spoke about the fear of a zero world. Zero world means zero inflation, means zero GDP growth per capita, means zero productivity growth. So the problem is, and the question is, how to grow a business in a zero growth market. This is the challenge. In a zero growth market, demand falls, and market start to fragment themselves into smallest market, some of which are increasing and other are decreasing. So the real challenge is to realize this kind of changes before the competitors and adapt the organization in order to take advantage about this. Okay, how can be successful on them? First is learn from disruptors. A typical example is the new financial technologies and company that now are connecting savers to small and medium enterprises that are asking for loans. The second point is is about create a new market. I've got an example for a big retail company that is changing his loyalty card into a real credit card that you can use, of course, in their point of sales, but all over the world. Take an integrated view of changes. The typical example that we described is about automotive. The automotive sector now has to face with challenges that are regarding public investment on public sector, on oil prices, on the change in behavior of the younger people that now prefer to rent a car instead of buy it. Identify emerging profit pools, so it's really central for professional, for CIO and CFO. I think that the traditional use of traditional BI solution is inadequate to find these outcomes. So, what do we need? First of all, we have not to answer two questions, but we have to find the right question, analyzing data by itself. So the analysis of data must push us to pwn the right question. And then, of course, we have to find the right answers. What do we need for being successful in this? Number one, the lack of architectural and system barriers. Number two, we have to have a free navigation, but let me say a creative navigation tool all over the information asset. Number three, we must be able to not to have intelligence on business data, yes, but we have to have intelligence in order to cover the business needs. Here, there is a new situation. We spoke about that in these two days many times. That is that the amount of data that is generated and stored is increasing very rapidly. And new types of data now are able to be analyzed. Here we see the typical structured ERP data or data coming from data mart or relational database, but think also at email, at market research, at information about the sector all over the world, or the social and the social interaction that generate new message and so new information. The Accounting Council of USA stated that professionals who can see the patterns in the data and who are able to translate them into compelling strategy stories will find themselves at the core, at the heart of the zero growth economy. Okay, so we must transform this kind of data, all this kind of data, into new strategy stories. How can we do this? We can use big data. If you see the Gartner definition of big data is not so different from the business intelligence one. Gartner says about high volume, high velocity, high variety informational assets that requires a new form of processing to enable decision making. Okay, volume, velocity, and variety are the first three big factors for a big data solution. Volume refers to the quantity of data that every day each one generates and store. We talk about gigabyte per person. So in the world we can find terabyte and terabyte about our company and our business. Velocity is referring to the speed at which new data is generated every second. Think to Twitter message or WhatsApp message or other form of communication between consumers and the company. Variety, because this kind of data not is structured if it came from data warehouse or ERP, but it could be also unstructured if it's a WhatsApp message, or semi-structured if you think about the description that you write when you order a bank transfer to someone. In the last years, Gartner added 2 V to its glossary. One is veracity. Veracity is referring to the quality of data that we are loading and we have to load into our big data system. And the fifth V is probably the most important one, that is the value. So how can evaluate and how can make value from a big data environment? Here we have an hypothesis of solutions, and we put on the left a typical, traditional business intelligence solution, and on the right a big data solution. What are the main differences? First of all, point number one, we have to identify all available data. It seems that identify the data, whatever the source, whatever the type, whatever the frequency, whatever the quality. Then load all this data into high capacity or high velocity database. Then find insights, it's typical, find correlations, okay, find predictions, okay, but the most important thing is find new questions to answer. So the paradigm is inverted. We have not to answer to the questions that we pose to the system, but we have to find new questions by analyzing the data by itself. Then, of course, we have to develop in parallel a traditional BI solution. This is an hypothesis of architecture of a big data solution. So we have okay. Here we see on the left a classic Hadoop file system. This could be said as the data lake, in which we load all the data, that we have. Then we can connect directly this kind of data to visual and discovery tools or BI tools. But if we want to make some real-time analysis, then there are some stream solution that enable BI and reporting directly to the source. Of course, the most important questions and the most important answers are to be stored into a traditional data warehouse, and that can be accessed by a traditional BI BI solution. So, there is a big challenges for professional now, because we have not only to transfer the skills from service to business, but they have to create new skills, because they have directly to work over a big data solution. And if they want to be at the heart of the zero growth market business, they will find the best way to measure the value of data by itself. Of course, to measure the organizational performance inside that kind of data, and for third, the organizational risk. Let's focus on the first two very rapidly. Evaluate data asset is very difficult. Recent research has stated that about 20% of the largest USA company are able to evaluate their data asset and put it into their balance sheet. But it's a challenge for the CFO to find the right methods to evaluate the data asset. The second challenge that we have, of course, is that the value of the data is depending on the use that we make on it. For example, the analysis of messages coming from Twitter has a value of 0 typically for a CFO. But for a marketing manager, it's very, very important. So to find the right solution to evaluate this kind of data is really difficult. Second, the use of big data in decision-making, of course, represents by itself an opportunity. Let's think about the real-time and data-driven decision-making that are supported by a big data solution. Think at one retailer that knows exactly if in a specific point of sales there is an SKU with a specific color, with a specific size that is going out of stock. In this case, the near real-time analysis is very important to react. The second important thing that I want to share with you is that there is also a challenge in using real-time data. That is that the rapid obsolescence of this kind of information that put the CFO at the risk of taking decision based on out-of-date information. Okay. So, what we are now taking away from these 10 minutes, we are taking away that there are new challenges for CFO and CIO, that we have to analyze all kind of data that we have, and that the system must help us to pose the right questions before giving us the right answers. So these are the 10 CPM trends, in my opinion, that we can use when we evaluate a business intelligence and a CPM solution. The darker the area, and the more importance for CPM instead of BI. The first one is visualization. Visualization, in my opinion, is the number one characteristic that a BI tool must have. Why? Because if we think about the data lake, we can call the data lake also the data chaos. Okay? There is everything in that database. And if we use a very good visualization BI tool, this can help us to make sense of this kind of data and to represent them in a very appealing way. So, moving from data chaos to a real effective dashboard is one of the most important things to evaluate. Second one, the capability to, in literature, they talk about drill down. With Bohr, we talked about drill everywhere. It is exactly the opposite that from data chaos to good visualization. I want to start from my dashboard and go deep into my data lake to see in what day, what kind of customer, for what product, in what channel. And you know that not always we can use data warehouse. We have multiple sources coming from multiple databases, so the drill everywhere function is real central in our opinion. The third trend, the trend number 3, is to be cloud-based. I don't know if in this room there is the colleagues from Microsoft that talked yesterday. No, okay, so I can talk freely. I mean, the question that I pose to myself, I don't have the answer, is cloud is a trend or will dominate in the future? I really don't know. Probably will dominate. But what is important, in my opinion, is that if the BI and CPM solution continues to grow into the cloud, the vendor are pushed to create always new connection to all kind of sources. And so this is a benefit for us because they are pushed to do this. Okay, point number 4 is the suggestive BI. The colleagues from Board talked about this, I think, yesterday with the cognitive BI, that is a very important step into the suggestive. The suggestive is, think when you search something in the Google bar, and the Google bar complete your phrase and pawn a search that sometimes is more clever than the one that you wanted to do. This is suggestive BI. Suggestive BI is a tool that is enabled to find the right questions analyzing the data, okay? Cognitive analysis is an important part of suggestive BI. But if we find the right questions, who will share the right answer? This is referring to collaboration, okay? So in the case of, in the example that we talked about the Twitter messages, the CFO could say, I don't mind, but the marketing, the chief of marketing can say, no, this is very important. We have to collaborate, and only in this way we will find the right answer. But where we have to collaborate? Within the system. The solution must provide a real collaboration within all the users. And I know that I remember that board since its version number 3, yeah. So 20 years ago had a good way of connecting and sharing not only report but also comment, questions, and so on between the users. Okay, let's go on. Prediction. Predictive analytics is the practice of extracting information from existing data sets in order to forecast future probabilities. It's not a nice to have, of course, and you know that Board has a very, very powerful solution that help the different analysts to make predictive analysis. 7 point. This is referred to CPM, not to BI, not also to BI. We have seen a lot of P&L in these 3 days, okay? But the P&L just have to condense the data that are coming from operational budgeting and operational planning. So the CPM solution must support in the same environment both financial and operational data. Typically, we start with operation data, so we start with sales, transformation, then supply chain, then purchases budget, and then collect it into the P&L of our customers. The capability to have this into the same application using the same cubes is really, really essential. But if I got a CPM solution that have a cube based on day, customer, suppliers, item, SKU, and I want to make different scenarios on this, then the data really and exponentially increases. So the fast and the speed of the system is central. My colleagues, my young colleagues, always said me that they can't wait an hour to see the result of a complete integrated budgeting solution. Okay, 20 years ago, we wait for a whole night, and we were very happy to see it, to see the result. Number 9, it's the capabilities to merge into the CPM model numbers, of course, but all the data that you can provide in order to explain, okay, the information that you are writing. So you have to cover and manage also pictures, also notes, documentation, and into the same application. This, of course, is very valuable because you can immediately answer to any questions that the CFO or the general director can make you, asking for more details. This is the last one, that is the multi-cubes capabilities. Okay, so for us, this is typical for a CPM solution. You know that the board is based on the capabilities to manage different cubes with different dimensions. This is not typical in the CPM, in a CPM solution. Typically, a CPM solution have one cube for application, And you have to manage all the dimensions into that single cube. But when we talk about integrated planning, so we have cube about sales, cube on supply chain, cubes on delivery, cube on P&L, and dimension on balance sheet, of course, the capability to manage a multi-cube solution is very important. And how is the, and I'm finishing, how is the coverage grade of board capabilities for this trend? Very high, really very high. If we put numbers on each of these trends, you can see really that coverage of board is or 5-star on 5, or at least 4-star on 5. So if you have planned to start a big data project, I'm sure that if you use board, you have useful use of that kind of information. Thank you.